Good evening and welcome to TDM Talk Show. Our guest has been based in Macau over the past 7 years. He's a composer, conductor, organist and author. Before arriving in Macau, Aurelio Porfiri was an organist at St. Peter's Basilica, as well as in many notable churches in Italy. Here in the SAR, Mr. Porfiri was an associate professor at the University of St. Joseph and has been director of choral activities and composer in residence for Santa Rosa de Lima School English section and director of musical activities for Our Lady of Fatima Girls School. Aurelio Porfiri is leaving Macau for good at the end of this month and will share with us his experience in the region over the past few years. Mr. Porfiri, thank you very much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. In your website, there's a motto which caught my attention. At the top of the page, it says, "Music is never about music." What do you mean by that? So what is music about?
Yes, the meaning is that sometimes people think that you can know just through, I don't know, the scientific disciplines. And the music is just fun or entertainment. But I argue, and with me many others, even Beethoven say that music is the highest way of knowledge. And this is exactly what I want to say. Music is not just about music. I mean, not just about sounds or about notes or pleasant melodies, but it's a way of knowing. So it's not just about the music itself, but it's a way of reading the world.
You see, is a highest or the highest way Beethoven said. Yes, you're quoting Beethoven. Would you assume that, I mean, of course, for someone who's a religious person, that takes you closer to God?
Yeah, of course, of course. There is no doubt that this is why the church during the centuries put so much effort in supporting new composition, new composers, because the popes and the church leadership, they were very well aware that of course, through words, I mean, we can explain, but there is a kind of boundary where the word cannot go or beyond, and the music can help us to overcome that boundary and to lead us, for sure, closer to God. There is a very beautiful poem of Tagore, the Indian poet, that they say that through the song we can touch the feet of God. You know, it's a very beautiful image. So that for sure is one of the function that music can have.
And this brings me to your work as a musician. Well, while in Macau, your work, your compositions have been published all across the world, namely in Italy, Germany, France, United States, China, among other countries. And I was talking about the religious music because actually you have been focusing on liturgical compositions, but you go beyond that. So for those that are watching us and they're not very familiar with what you do, how would you label yourself as a musician?
Yes, if someone will ask me what I am as a musician, for sure I have to answer I am a church musician. That is what I did for all my life, basically, since I was 13 or 14, so more than 30 years now. And but of course, this does not limit me to compose also music not for the church. So I also compose, and I hope to publish soon in Germany some piano music, and I try to compose also some symphonic music. But it's true that most of what I did is indeed related to religion, to the Catholic Church. That, as an example, for example, I have this CD that it's the
you can actually, yeah, you can show.
This is the oratorio that I composed for the student of Santa Rosa de Lima and Our Lady of Fatima, and it was performed in 2014 in the Santa Clara Church in the Santa Rosa de Lima Chinese section. It's an oratorio with choir, orchestra, soloists, so it's a really big work. and it's called Corpus Domini. So always refer to the Eucharist, and so I know that my own background is in that kind of area. But I mean, I don't exclude to write in also outside the liturgical music field.
So you were talking about this album, this CD, and that event, and this is something that you are particularly proud of in terms of achievements in Macau. Would you elaborate on this?
Yes, I think probably I have to say before that I always notice that I write also in one of my articles that in Macau there is a lot of fear. You know, the people is always afraid to do things or new things because they are afraid to do mistakes. You know, when you do mistakes, it means you lose your face, and so the people prefer not doing things than doing things and risking to do mistakes. Indeed, when I start to propose this kind of projects, I also met with resistance because, no, the students cannot do this. I mean, this oratory is only Latin, all completely Latin. The students cannot do this. But indeed, when I realized this project and others, I realized that the students are much better than the people think. And so I am very proud that I was able to force boundaries. And of course, I cannot do this if I don't have the support of the schools where I work, and I have really to be very grateful, and I will be eternally grateful to Sister Judith Yun in Santa Rosa de Lima, and to Sister Luisa Lui in Our Lady of Fatima, because they really strongly support me and protect me. And also I have the support of the Miss Candy in Santa Rosa de Lima and Miss Cecilia in Our Lady of Fatima, that are the two principals that also support my efforts and trust in my own opinion that I can do the things that then I achieve. So yeah, I have to say I'm afraid that I was able to resist frustration, you know, because the frustration can be very big when you are always fighting against resistance. But I have to say that part is my own, it's my own effort, but also I really get a lot of strength from my students.
So you were saying that actually your effort, at least at an early stage and even beyond that, was met with some resistance. Where does this resistance stems from? I mean, are we talking about an ongoing mindset of parents or educators or the students themselves? What's going on?
So, not the students. I mean, the students, as I say, and I will repeat it many times, I have fantastic students, fantastic. I mean, I always say to everyone and everyone interviewing me, the students in Macau are fantastic, fantastic. The problem are not the students. The problem is the system, you know. So it means the students are fantastic now because they are still pure in a certain way, still in the phase where they can rely on their creativity. But then, unfortunately, Macau society, because of the way it's done, because of the mentality, kill all of this. So when they grow up, to survive in the environment, they have to lose this great gift of creativity, and unfortunately, I mean, become what they potentially are not. So that's the resistance is everywhere except the students. I mean, the students, you will never hear from me a word negative for the students, but not because I want to be polite, because I really believe it.
So, over these years, I assume that you've met some very gifted young talents. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, and I can tell you I meet constantly with very gifted students, not just in music, but gifted for other things, design or other things. So what always is my suggestion continuously is go study abroad. go study abroad, because unfortunately this city and this society will not allow your talents to develop in the way you can develop. So I always suggest this: go abroad, see the world, see other mentalities, go where you find teachers that will encourage your mistakes, because we know that mistakes are a step to creativity. We create through mistakes. There is no perfect at the first time. So I always tell them, go abroad, see the world, and see that the world is not as it is Macau. Macau is just a little village. You don't have to base your development on the way it is in the city.
But for those who, for some reason, there may be a number of reasons, are not able to go abroad, I mean, what would you suggest in terms of the local music education system, methods, approaches, suggestions? I mean, what could be improved?
So these are two questions. So the first question is, for those that cannot go abroad, I still suggest at least go Hong Kong, where the level is for sure higher. About the local education system, I just can maybe take it a little from afar. You know, in Italy, we have the big art flourishing in Renaissance, okay? How was this art flourishing? Why we have so many good Italian composers and painters and architects and sculptors? Why so many? Because we have the Pope that invite international artists to come to Rome and to produce in Rome and make them wealthy, so it means they will stay. And so what happened is that these artists serve as a model for the Italian. So the Italian know that if they want to raise to the standard to be wealthy, they need to improve their skill as those great artists. If you want to take a closer example, take soccer. I mean, we are European, and you know that people in our country like soccer very much, no? When I was very young, I remember that the Italian national team, they don't win anything, any cup, any World Cup. Then the Italian soccer league, they open to foreign players. So during the year we have, I don't know, Maradona, very famous players. Klinsmann, all these very famous. And then what happened? 1982, the Italy win the World Cup in Spain, the Italian national team. Why? Because this Italian player grow themselves close to this big soccer player. So it's the same for Macau, same. If you want the level of music education to grow, you need to invite...
So you're saying that Macau needs to attract more foreign talents?
For sure.
How can Macau be attractive for talents? I mean, let's say your case. You were lured to come to Macau.
Yes.
Why was some other people, musicians, we're talking about musicians, who can transfer and share this know-how, this knowledge to the local artists?
But that is exactly the problem. That is exactly the problem. Macau is not a welcoming place for musicians.
Why is that?
Because there is this very close mentality. You know, sorry if I make many examples, but I think they will make my case much better. You take United States. United States, they develop their music education and everything. How? They invite great musicians from Europe, or some of them, they go in the United States because of they were Jewish, and then they go because of the war. But what's the thing? I mean, even myself, you say, oh, but you also came in Macau and you were paid. Yes. But the thing is, those musicians were not just invited, but were made to feel very welcome. And some of them were also invited to become American, national American. Here, there is always the problem that there is always this us and you. You know, there is always this gap between the foreigners and the locals. So that's the issue. You know, that's the problem. You will never be part of the society if you are a foreigner.
But let me jump in here. For instance, you were talking about Hong Kong, but let's look at mainland China. Well, perhaps I may be talking more about Beijing, Shanghai, even Shenzhen to a lesser extent. I mean, you have more and more foreign talents, artists, musicians settling in these mainland cities.
Yes.
So is China making its way in this respect? Gradually, mainland China?
Yeah, I think it's not exactly like this. I think the reason why a lot of people try to go to China is because you know that in Europe we have a financial crisis.
The market thing
the market is terrible. And so the thing is people try to find a possibility in China. But then when you talk with the people, as you talk with me, then you have also to see the other side of the coin. That is what I'm telling you. The very big problem to relate with the people because I mean I don't think to say anything that can sound offensive, but you know especially Chinese are they don't blend. You know what I mean? You don't blend easily with other people. I don't say this as any offensive. I mean, it's just the way they are. They don't blend. So that's for me the big difference. For example, when we talk about the two superpowers, you know, USA and China now, that USA indeed get the best from everywhere. You know, from everywhere, from Jewish, from Italians, from Hispanic, from. And so they develop so much because they can get the best everywhere. China is much more difficult because China is always Chinese. You know what I mean? They are strongly ethnic.
But still in Macau, we've been having more and more foreign talents in different fields, professionals, in many areas. So you would say that in terms of music, is still a far cry from what you might expect it. Is that the case?
Yes, I should for sure say like this.
Now, for parents who are watching us and would like their children to learn music, maybe to become musicians, or they may spot some gift, but they don't know what to do. What piece of advice have you got for them?
Yes, first of all, I will strongly advise that if they are serious to send their sons or daughters to study abroad. I'm sorry, I have to say that's really true, because I think that most of the teaching that the students get, for example, in this music shop, I mean, of course, they teach them to play a piece, but they don't teach anything about the background, about the meaning. And I mean, it's teaching like this is like, I don't know, it's like a circus thing. So I would suggest to go abroad, or at least to try to find in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, there are some good institutions where they can apply. And I would suggest them, in any case, today we have the facility to have like YouTube, and so to look the best in their field. I mean, don't take as example, I mean, just local people because they're local, but look, as I have done always.
And you have many good examples from mainland China, great musicians in terms of contemporary music who could also serve as reference, right? Some of them are actually based, not only based in China, and based in the United States and based elsewhere.
That's the point. I mean, when you talk about Chinese, for example, we take two examples, very famous. Tan Dun, for example, Tan Dun, a very famous composer, but he's based in the United States. I met him in Shanghai. But he's based in the United States. He studied there. So he's Chinese, fully Chinese, and he's great because he can combine Chinese traditional music with Western techniques, but he lives in New York also most of the time. Lang Lang, the pianist.
Yeah, I was thinking about Lang Lang, of course.
Lang Lang, if you read the book of Lang Lang, the autobiography, he said that, he as a father was very strong in making him study like hours and hours every day, piano. And then Lang Lang wins some competition in China, but one day he go to, I think, Canada, and he listen to a Russian pianist play, and he say in his book that only in that time he understood what was music. That's the point. I mean, you can, of course, I will be the last one to tell you that there are no talents. Of course, there are many talents in China or in India or in Brazil or wherever you want. The problem is where you need the environment to develop, and there was this book by Professor Liu from University of Hong Kong that is called New Music in China, And when he speak about Macau, he say the same thing, and he's Chinese. And he said the same thing. He say, Macau, unfortunately, there is not a cultural environment that allow talents to develop. So what happened? All the Chinese talents also from Macau, they all go abroad. I mean, there are several cases of composers that go and live abroad still today. They don't live in Macau because they know. And when I talk with them, I mean,
but some of them, I mean, to move things forward, it would be desirable that some of them would return to Macau and then transfer this
yes.
know-how, this knowledge, this
the
skills.
Environment.
You were talking about Macau as, of course, and still talking about liturgical compositions and other ways of art in terms of, like linked to the church. I was thinking about Father Aurelio Castro, and actually you've told me a while ago that some people have said, oh, you're the kind of follower of what Father Castro did here. How do you regard his work and, in a way, this kind of role that you've been playing over the past few years?
This is a very good question because allow me to really reinforce what I said before. Before coming to Macau, I don't even know who was Father Castro. I don't even heard the name. And you have to know, I mean, I study liturgical music since I was very young, so I know most of the famous people, even in other countries. So about him, I knew nothing. Then when I arrived in Macau and I start to see his music, I said, oh, but this is a good composer. I mean, really good technique. And the problem is, he stayed all his life in Macau. So because of the nature of Macau, he remained isolated from the rest of the musical world. So no one knows him outside Macau. That's very sad, because he would deserve. So what is the big difference between me and Father Castro? Now, without entering in technical details about the music or things like this, the big difference is that I live in the time of internet. So my things can be spread everywhere because of Facebook, because of emails, because of, if Father Castro probably lived today, he would have an easier life. But before, there was not an environment. I mean, Father Castro was really great, doing great things here. I mean, he created a music academy. I mean, he composed really important works. The problem is the environment. I mean, it's not conducive to developing, a cultural life.
But still, you've managed, and I was saying, over the past few years, to publish your compositions across the world, and I'd like you to talk about your latest pieces. I mean, there's an upcoming album, but maybe you want to also talk about the latest one.
Yeah, indeed, there are really many things. I can just mention
in terms of music, and then you'll talk about, of course,
about music,
your books.
Now is going to be published my Magnificat for choir and orchestra that will be published in Germany. And then I hope that soon will be published this oratorio, Corpus Domini, always in Germany. Then there are some of my small pieces that I composed for Santa Rosa de Lima will be published in USA, in spring. Then I composed some time ago a mass for a Roman church, very beautiful church, and this mass is already published now, recently, in Germany, and for this mass I was made honorary master of this church where I was organized many years ago. Then with my own company I recently published my motets for the some of the one that I composed for Santa Rosa de Lima choir and Our Lady of Fatima. I published and we recorded it on Saturday. And I also publish a collection of canonic motets. That means motets that follow some quite complicated musical technique, counterpoint, and this. And I publish also this. And I compose all of this for my Chinese wonderful students.
I would like you to talk about this dual role that you have. Of course, you're primarily a musician, but also a scholar and an author. You've published 10 books, over 10 books, hundreds of articles. How do you regard yourself in this dual role?
I regard myself as someone that thinks. So, as I said before, Music is a way of knowledge, and I use many medium to probably communicate some messages that I think are important to be communicated. So I don't feel any contradiction or nothing. I mean, many other composers in the past, they were also writer.
It's quite common. And in your latest book, I believe it's the latest one, Fate questo in memoria di me. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly in Italian. Thank you. Which would be something, do this in my memory, in memory of me. A collection of profiles, Eucharistic profiles.
Yes. This is a series of articles that I did years ago for an Italian magazine, and they were a profile of saints or blessed that are not very famous, with the exception of Padre Pio, that is very famous. And I focus on their Eucharistic devotion, and so we put together all these articles, and a publisher from North Italy published this collection. And now in October will come out my new book in Italian also, that will be the collection of all my articles about China and Macau, and
will that be translated into English or Portuguese
probably,
or Chinese?
Yes, probably will be translated in English. I asked the publisher to retain the foreign rights, so I would like to at least translate it in English, and maybe to publish in my own company, and then to translate it in even Portuguese. And then there are other projects. One is I made 1 year ago an interview with Cardinal Zen, and I'm going to publish also this one in
Hong Kong's Cardinal Joseph Zen.
Yeah, yes. And it will be, this one for sure, Italian and English, will be published probably through my own publisher. And then there is this other interview I did. I mean, indeed, I have many books ready, but this other I think is quite important, because I interview one professor from Lateran University. He is one professor specialized in topics related with family and divorce. He's a priest. And I think it would be very interesting to see what he said about the issue of family or a Eucharist to the remarried, this thing that will be now a hot topic in October.
Because Pope Francis has brought that onto the agenda. Definitely.
Exactly, because and indeed this priest was an inspiration behind Cardinal Casper, that is one of the main, we say, on the progressive side, So I think what this priest says is quite interesting, so I hope to have it published as soon as I come back to Rome, that I have more time to edit.
And you're also preparing a PhD thesis focusing on music and history.
Yes.
A sound history.
Yes. Indeed, it would be more accurate to say that I conclude mostly my PhD. I'm revising all the chapter. And yes, this PhD in a certain way is on the line of the motto on my website. So it's want to demonstrate how music can also be used as a way of knowledge. So like to fill this gap between the scientific discipline and the art as a pure entertainment. So I showed that music is also a way of knowing history, and just is a different way from the common historiography. So we should not regard music as inferior, but it's just as different. And I rely on, especially on a French historian like Pierre Nora or Philippe Paris, and to demonstrate my arguments.
Before we wrap up our talk, I have two additional questions. One has to do with the past few years, and the other one with the near future. So, what are you more particularly proud of with regards to your presence in Macau, this chapter of your life, of your career in Macau?
What I am particularly proud is that I remain alive, totally frankly, in the sense that I always mention that for sure these 7 years changed me a lot, changed me in good ways and in bad ways also, but they changed me a lot.
So tell us about the good ways.
Yes, I prefer. The good ways is that because of the good students I have, I can really develop a lot my creativity. So create a lot, and as you mentioned before, I can write a lot of books, and so that is really something that I'm particularly proud. I mean, I'm particularly proud of my students. Indeed, when people ask me what are the things I will bring with me from Macau, one thing is for sure are my students. One other thing is the metaphysical Macau.
Metaphysical Macau? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So because you know Father Teixeira, no? Father Teixeira.
Sure. Monsignor Teixeira.
And before he returned to Portugal, where he died a few years later, before he was, I think, 2000 something. He has an interview with a journalist in Macau. I don't remember which kind of magazine. And this journalist asked him why he go back to Portugal. I mean, Father Teixeira stayed here for like 60 years. I mean, really all his life. And Father Teixeira give a very interesting answer. He said, I go back to Portugal because I don't want to see Macau dying, And I think what he say, it's something that should really be considered carefully. I think what he mean is that Macau that he knew was going to fade because of historical circumstances. So I think also that Macau don't exist anymore. Now Macau is no more Macau, is Omun. Is different. And I don't want to blame this. I mean, it's history. History goes in direction that we don't control. But I'm still attached to that metaphysical Macau. I mean, that kind of realm of memory that was Macau, where supposedly the East meets West, and probably this meeting never happened, because we know that even historically, we have the Chinese community, we have the Portuguese community, but they don't really mix. And this is also Father Teixeira said the same in this interview. He said there was always the Chinese area and the Portuguese area, they rarely mix. Also for, the language and many other things. So, but this idea, that there is a place in Asia where supposedly the East can meet West, I think is a kind of metaphysical idea. So, in this regard, I consider Macau as a metaphysical place. It's a place where ideally this meeting is always possible. We will never know if one day will really happening or not. But I like this idea. I mean,
and you believe it's still possible?
It's more and more
maybe
difficult.
The younger generations perhaps may have, from the different communities, I would say, perhaps maybe open-minded towards that?
I really hope. But the problem is, that unfortunately the society is not leading to this openness. As I said before, there is a kind of always us and you, that is this kind of very, this is something maybe I feel more, and probably I don't know about your opinion, because I'm Italian. In Italy, really a foreigner can integrate really very easily and become part of the society. But here it's a little more difficult, and I always have spoken with the Portuguese. And I also have the feeling that also the Portuguese, they are among themselves, but don't often blend with the Chinese and vice versa. So I don't know the younger generation. What I can see, one thing I can say, this is not only related to Macau, but to well in China, that younger generation of Chinese, they crave for Western things. They crave. They Western dressing, Western music, Western car, Western everything. So I think they want Western culture. I don't know how much they want Western people. you know. So this is something probably I don't have an answer now, and maybe there will be people that can give an answer more accurate about this topic.
One final question. You're going to return to Rome,
Yes.
to Italy. Tell us about your future plans.
My future is at the moment, what I can say is to develop my company, my publishing company, and really I want to develop a lot. To continue to develop my blog. We didn't mention about this, but I have a blog, ilnaufrago.com. And my blog have an average of 15,000 contacts for months. I have many contributors. It is more like a newspaper than a blog. And then, of course, I mean, hopefully there will be other things happening that now I cannot imagine, maybe, but of course.
But still, there will still be this connection, Macau connection and link with Macau, right?
You know, that is unavoidable. You know, as I say, Macau is a part of my life, and really, I mean, if I can give maybe a final message, is that really there are wonderful young people in Macau, and they deserve more than what they have now. That is just my question. So this is why I'm very passionate. I'm not passionate to show that I'm good or not. This history will tell us. But what I can tell you is that the students are really brilliant and they deserve a better future than the one I can see is prepared for them. So it's just this. And I hope, of course, I will have connection because I am still contributing to Au Clarim. So
it's a weekly Catholic newspaper?
Yes, and I weekly contribute to the magazine and maybe to other Macau magazine, and so there will be still contact, and Macau will always be part of my life. Like that can be that is unavoidable, and I hope even in my new capacity that I can still give a contribute to the development, the good development of the society.
And with this, we finish and we wrap up our talk. Thank you very much, Aurelio Porfiri, for joining us today for this interesting talk.
Thank you very much.
And to you at home, thank you for watching. We'll be back next week.